Lyndon LaRouche looked decades ahead. He warned the USA and its partners about the inevitable collapse of their financial expansion policy, under which the interests of speculators eclipse the national interest and the development of the economy.
This is one of the 3 most dangerous people on the planet, carefully charting the crimes of the parasitical elite in a video he made especially for you, so that you can understand what's going on in the globe, what's going on in the Ukraine war, and what's about to happen financially in the Western world. Sergey Glazyev is about to open up a second front in this Ukraine war, which is really a war between the G7 banksters and the rest of the world, 60% of the globe, which has now broken free. And Sergey Glazyev is the equivalent of Jerome Powell. But unlike Jerome Powell is just there waving his hands and pretending to have all the power. This guy is putting together the financial architecture of the future. And this is the book he wrote, Genocide, Russia and the New World Order. Rare. Now that's what I'm talking about. This I can get, and I think you can get it too. Yeah. And he's also well aware of the role of Lyndon LaRouche, a guy you probably never even heard of, most of you I reckon. LaRouche had warned that the banksters' money printing bubble mania would lead to 2007, 2008 and would lead to even worse disasters as more bubbles were used to paper over the flaws in the previous bubbles and would hollow out our economies. So have a listen now as Sergey Glazyev brings you the insights developed in collaboration with somebody who will be called a conspiracy cult nutcase, Lyndon LaRouche, and how they are using those philosophies to create the architecture of the future economy for the globe, with implications for you and, of course, for the entire planet.
The global speculators and world oligarchy, which are parasites on the monetary emission of world currencies, greatly disliked LaRouche for this. And if Lyndon LaRouche had been elected president, the world today would be developing in a stable fashion. There would not be the growing chaos, there would not be the worldwide wars and provocations which the global oligarchy does in order to write off its debts. In practically all the major countries in the world that today are developing successfully, above all India and China, there are partisans of LaRouche. They have used his thoughts and ideas for creating their economic miracles. It is the principles of physical economy championed by LaRouche that today underlie the Chinese economic miracle and are there in the foundations of India's economic development policy.
Sergey Glazyev there confirming that the LaRouche ideas are at the heart of the BRICS economic structure, which they are in the process of developing. And that structure is gold bricks, as I'm terming it. It's not just BRICS. BRICS has gone way beyond BRICS, folks, because everybody's jumped on the BRICS bandwagon, and now it's just a shorthand for everybody on the planet except the G7 banksters. And gold is the financial weapon of mass destruction, which they are going to use to tame the money printing bubble mania of the bankster elite. That's what Glazyev is onto. And in recent months since he did that video, he has been hinting very strongly that he's thinking, and they are thinking, of changing the way gold works and oil works and starting to price oil and gold linked to each other, something which would, according to a number of calculations, double the existing price of gold. That would tame him. But if you think that is wild, that the architect of the global economy is espousing and buds with the late and dear departed Lyndon LaRouche Just listen to his conspiracy theories that he's coming out with now.
Эрудиция Линдона LaRouche.
I was always impressed by Lyndon LaRouche's enormous erudition. He saw the parasitical global oligarchy from its origins and traced how those oligarchical families were parasites on trade, first in Venice, then they resettled and continued to build up their financial power through international trade and global speculation in Holland. Then they relocated to England, and after that seized control of the political system of the United States. Lyndon LaRouche saw the totality of world history through the prism of the struggle between the good, national interests, the interests of improving the general welfare, and the forces of evil, the world financial oligarchy which hinders countries' development, which strives to extract speculative super profits from trade and economic cooperation, and which deceives the entire world by inflating speculative bubbles and abuses its positions of power in the countries where it dominates the political system. Lyndon LaRouche's warnings are coming to pass. It is important that these warnings are not abstract. They are not simply lines on a graph. I remember the famous triple curve, where he showed the growing gap between the size of the world real economy and the size of the world financial system. He was the first to make note of this disproportion, which 30 years ago was still not so big. It could still have been overcome by transforming the excess financial aggregates into the real sector, into real investment projects. Now, this is a gigantic abyss. It is impossible today to transform quadrillions of dollars of financial bubbles into investments in the real sector of the economy. There are simply no mechanisms for this. None was created because the parasitical financial oligarchy, which hated LaRouche, which always tried to shut his mouth and persecuted him and tried to keep him locked up, ultimately acquired a monopoly on political power in the United States. And today, it uses its political influence in Washington to force all the countries in the world to obey its will.
Speak up, brother. Speak up. And remember, these words are not coming out of the mouth of some isolated fringe conspiracy theorist. Even though most people have never heard of Sergey Glazyev, this guy has more power than Jerome Powell, who has no power at all and is just a stooge, whereas this guy is actually 60% of the global economy has been constructed based on the philosophies and the ethical structure you just heard him articulate. Now tell me we're not winning. Listen to some more. And we just get just a little bit more now, a few sentences, because this is killer, as he puts the knife right in.
Lyndon LaRouche turned out to be right. Today we rely on his work, his writings, in composing proposals for a very rapid transition to a new world economic paradigm. We call it an integrated world economic model in which finance capital will be subordinated to the tasks of developing the economy and in which the principles of physical economy will come to fruition.
Yeah, that's where the rubber meets the road. Did you hear those words, folks? Let me put them up here so we can get a good look at them. He said, we call it, the new system, an integrated world economic model in which finance capital will be subordinated to the tasks of developing the economy. That's the bottom line. Finance capital, you see, all this bubble mania is going up at the same time as real actual economic output is going down. So you end up with virtual stuff being valued and physical stuff not being produced. This has hollowed out Western economies and it has also served as a way of robbing the rest of the planet. That's the system he's bringing an end to. And also, this is the system where we lost control of our economies, where that flipped. Instead of governments telling bankers what they can and cannot do, and governments printing the money, governments under a mandate from the people, we saw a complete takeover. And instead, we have governments going to the bankers looking to borrow money. Well, that's what is being flipped. You want to make it real simple, that's just being flipped. But Glazyev knows the price of all this and knows the cost of this.
There is no doubt that the ruling American financial oligarchy is losing the hybrid world war, which they have started against all mankind. It's only regrettable that the price that has to be paid for this will be very high. That includes the lives being lost as a result of the war that the American and European financial oligarchy organized against Russia on the territory of Ukraine. We have to muster all our forces to fight that evil, and the creative legacy of Lyndon LaRouche helps in this. May his memory live forever.
Amen. Indeed, died in 2019. So Sergey ain't messing around. Sergey knows the price we have got to pay, and they're ready to escalate, folks. If the Bankster elite want a long war, well then it's time to deploy the financial weapon of mass destruction and begin to attack the economic base of the Bankster elite, using gold as the weapon. Not going to get into the technicals of all that, just showing you the current state of play. We're about to see that happen, I think. They're going to use the financial weapon to undermine the capacity of the West to continue to try and bleed the rest of the world and bring this thing to an end. That's the next stage if there isn't a negotiated solution. The timing of that, still unknown. But Sergey, and he's the guy who should know, is already talking about it. And I wouldn't underestimate Sergey if I was the New World Order. It's definitely time to do a deal. And it's also definitely time for us to follow the example of the rest of the world, take these people on and defeat them here in the G7 nations, where they have no political capital, no vision, nothing to offer, only doom, gloom and serfdom. Let's break free, along with Sergey, inspired, ironically, by Lyndon LaRouche Jr., and end this new world order. That's it for this edition of The Beautiful Truth as we head towards the demise of the Bankster elite. And I'm just loving it. Hope you are too. And don't buy into the doom and gloom you hear coming from the alternative media, which is doing its best to convince you that these people still have the power to take over everything and blah. No, that's just yet more psychological warfare against you to try and inspire fear. Fear is not what's inspiring Sergey and those who are standing up against the New World Order. I hope it will inspire you too. All right, back with more very soon. Hope you can join me for that. But in the meantime, for breakfreenews.com and for informedconsent.ie, this has been Fintan Dunn reporting. Give an old like there. It helps to overcome the censorship. And subscribe if you're not familiar with the channel, or you may never see me again. All right, that's it. See you soon.